It's a Tuesday edition here on Zero Block 30, and today we have 5 rounds of the magazine. Round number 1, Marines go viral for getting wet in their whites. Just while they were returning from a funeral, though. But it was a cute video, and it showed the spirit of the Marines. And it's nice when something goes viral for one of our branches of service, and we're like, hell yeah, because sometimes it's something that's so god awful. We're like, fuck, like those January 6th protesters that were out there again this weekend. It's like, please don't be a Marine. Please don't be a Marine. Fuck, former Marine. It's like, god damn it. We don't want that. Round number 2. Homeless veterans are making a statement as they grow a tent city out that's called Veterans Row in Los Angeles. It's complete with a resident rank structure in true veteran fashion. Those cities are sad and they're popping up, but our friends like Jason Kander up in Missouri are doing things to have actual villages because that's what people should be doing, supporting the veterans. Round number 3, about damn time the LGBT vets with other than honorable discharges will be getting VA benefits under a new plan that's dropping now that it's the 10th anniversary of Don't Ask, Don't Tell, which is shocking. I can't believe it's been 10 years. That makes me feel old as fuck, really. Like that 10 years ago, it seems like yesterday to me. Round number 4, China's military has a morale problem, which is shocking because it sure seems like a good time to be doing some China goofing on the open seas. Turns
Love
out
a good parade.
And they're fucking pissed at the Australians for saying, I guess did you guys see that China's super mad at Australia?
No,
because
spill the tea.
Because Australia has basically been having like those 5-star recruits that are going to go to Alabama, LSU, or Ole Miss, where they have like their hats out on the table. That's essentially what Australia's been doing, like with their strategic partnership. They're like, are we going to sign with India? Are we going to sign with China? Are we going to sign with the U.S. delegation? And it turns out when they turned around, they put on the old U.S. delegation with the U.K. Not only was China pissed, but our friends, the French, were pissed too. They were pissed because they canceled. Because Australia canceled their submarine contract. They were going to have a big submarine contract where France was going to build their nuclear subs, but now they're not. The U.S. is going to build them for Australia, so they're going to get in all that money. They were pissed about that. And another shout out to the French. Did you see that they killed the dude who set up when that ambush happened in Niger about 2 years ago and 4 soldiers were killed? And like Sergeant LaDavid was one of them. LaDavid Johnson, I believe his last name was. And they did a drone strike and killed that ISIS guy, like the ISIS in the Upper Sahara. They did an airstrike and killed him.
Ooh, so a lot of activity going on.
Yeah, which was actually a good airstrike.
Can I say one thing about this whole hullabaloo with Australia? It came out like a week or two ago that, the UK, the US, and Australia, we were all going to like join forces and whatnot, and something to that effect.
They were calling it AUKUS, which all I could think of was anus.
So the military needs SEO managers, just a social media manager to come up with their acronyms, because that doesn't slap.
But I have a question. I thought we were all buddies already.
That's what my initial tweet was. When it came out, I was like, it's brave of us to announce that our allies are now our allies. Like, those are our biggest allies on the planet.
You know what? Seriously. It probably was.
Except for Canada. No disrespect to our Canadian friends.
Australia was probably like, but are we like official though? Like, are we official?
They wanted a promise ring.
They wanted like a Letterman jacket. In the military
True Love
world,
Waits.
An acronym is a Letterman jacket.
Yeah.
Did you guys do True Love Waits?
I don't know what that is.
Okay.
No, I gave a hand job at church camp.
Oh yeah, the South Carolina squeezer. Yeah, True Love Waits is whenever you had like these big things at my church where you would promise not to let anybody touch whether you had a penis or a vagina. Nobody could touch that because that belonged to you, the Lord, and your future betrothed.
That's True very
Love
nice.
Waits, yeah. That's Promise ring too. Is promise ring a thing up north? I've been meaning to ask that because I've been watching this show on Plathville that's on Discovery Plus. And it's fantastic. I know Kate watches. I don't think Cons does, but they have one young couple. They're like 19 or 20, and the guy is buying the girl a promise ring. And I'm like, that's only a Southern thing. I don't think anybody in the North does that, right?
No, not really. I feel like if anybody does it up north, it's the creepy 19-year-old who dates the kid in high school still.
Oh yeah, that's the Marine that comes back and still going with his high school sweetheart.
Yeah.
Shows up in his Lance Corporal dress blues.
Yeah.
You know what's so funny? Back when you're in high school and you'd see a girl like dating a college guy, you're like, wow, that girl's so cool. She's dating a college guy. But then you think about it, What a loser that dude must have been.
Absolute
not as
loser.
cool. Yeah, not as cool.
No, not as cool when you get some perspective on life.
It's not. And finally, round number 5, we're going to give you some Afghanistan updates because there's still stuff going on. No matter what the mainstream media has to say about that, there are actually things going on, including, did you guys see that Newsmax clip this week? There was a dude that's working. I forget what branch of service he was in. I think he was in the Army, and he had spent time in Iraq and now has been doing the digital Dunkirk thing for since that really kicked off, and his organization has helped rescue thousands of people apparently. Well, he went on Newsmax and they were talking, and Newsmax is like crazy fucking news. Like,
oh yes, keep going. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. And so this dude had this guy on and they were talking about the processes, and the Newsmax host just wanted to blame Biden for everything. And the military member, the veteran who's doing all this stuff, was like, well, this has been the same policy for multiple presidency. It's not just the problem of Biden, basically echoing the things that we've said on this show. It's a culmination. Yes, Biden ultimately holds the bag because he's the one that did it. But if you want to actually talk about what happened, you have to talk about everybody. And then the host like lost it. It was like one of those Bill O'Reilly, old interview clips where he's like, fuck it, we'll do it live, fuck it, and he just like loses his mind on the guy's like, no, you're not gonna blame President Trump on this show, and legitimately loses his mind and tells his producer, cut him off, no, we're not gonna do that. And just 2 seconds before, he's like, I respect your service so much, thank you for doing everything. And the guy corrects him, is like, it's not just the Trump, or it's not just the Biden thing, it's Trump thing too. The dude loses it. Like, it was the perfect microcosm of the political processes of today.
Yeah,
I have found very much that people respect your service until they find out you disagree with them politically, and then your service means nothing all of a sudden. Yeah, it's all a dog and pony show. It's all for show. Nobody really supports the.
There was a guy this weekend who decided that he respected mine and Chaps' service, but that we both suck.
Yeah.
People only support, a lot of people in the media only support the troops so long as that particular troop can be a pawn that furthers their cause. That can be a show pony.
Some might say that's the culture in general, though.
Yeah. That's true.
Culture in general. And all of that today is going to be brought to you by our good friends at 3Chi. 3Chi is the industry leader in Delta 8 THC products, and all products are formulated by a biochemist and made here in the United States of America. 3Chi's Delta 8 is a federally legal version of THC and is a more functional alternative to marijuana. Gives you a nice buzz where you can watch your favorite shows like Ted Lasso, or the show that I've been watching on Discover Plus, which is Finding Inmates Love. That show was an absolute roller coaster, by the way.
Whoa.
Have you guys seen that? It's on Discovery Plus too. So this woman, she has a dating service where it's almost like Tinder or Grindr, but for people that are in jail. And she acts as the middleman, and she will take people's information down and then try to find an inmate that matches up with their desires and goals. And they have like video chats and things like that. It is fascinating.
Can I say something? The peak love was on deployment, sending letters when you couldn't access each other, and every now and then a video, and it was so romantic. And then you go back to reality, back to real life, and it's like, oh God, no, this isn't as good, so I kind of like the idea of dating a prisoner, to be honest with you.
Well, one of them, this guy looked like an absolute brick house. He was probably 6'2", 6'3",
so much gym time,
270, huge lats, in great shape, constantly wearing, like most prisoners are, like Long John material stuff. So it's really form fitting. This dude had a huge beard, and he's an attractive guy. Model prisoner. Remember that guy that was like the model prisoner guy that went super viral a few years ago?
Wide neck.
Yeah, no, not that guy.
No,
very different. Okay. Maybe
okay.
For 23-year-old kid, it was wide neck. But we have this guy he's attractive dude. And the woman that he's with, uggo, like just flat out uggo. Like she looks like she's slinging meatball subs at the Wawa. She's not exactly.
Whoa.
No, we don't. I know we don't meatball sub make shame, but I feel like I needed to paint a little bit of a picture here. And then when the guy's getting ready to get out, they've had this relationship for a while. The guy's getting ready to get out, and he tells the woman, I actually think I want to be celibate whenever I get out of prison after not having sex for 4 years. And she's like, I wonder if that's because he doesn't think that I'm attractive. Yeah, dude. That's the reason. Let's get going with the show. We got a lot of stuff to talk about, a lot of stuff to get into. First up is this video that came out. I saw it, I believe, Saturday morning. Kate had put it up on the 0Block30 Instagram page, which you need to follow. And the setting is that there was a big rainstorm that was happening on the East Coast. And Kate, walk us through a little bit of the details.
Yeah, this comes to us from Task and Purpose as a group of Marine Corps body bearers headed home from their 5th funeral service of the day.
Jeez.
That's a lot of funeral services.
I didn't realize they do multiple in a day.
Yeah, that's their full-time duty station is those guys. And usually they're like brick houses and they get height and weight waivers, like because a lot of them have to be so much bigger because the caskets are heavy. So they can be bigger than most normal Marines because you have to carry heavy shit.
And God, 5 times a day. I wonder what the most is they do in a day. I bet it's a ton. Anyway, they're heading back from their 5th funeral service of the day when they noticed a man and woman were in trouble. Their car, and I was scrolling the comments on TikToks, I believe it was a Mini Cooper because other people were like, I recognize the interior of that car. That thing gets stuck in 2 inches of water. Their car had stalled out in rising floodwaters just outside Arlington National Cemetery as a downpour dumped rain on the nation's capital last Thursday. There wasn't even really a conversation about it, said DC Marine Barracks spokeswoman Captain Katie Kosher. It's Koshert?
No, I think you nailed it.
I think you nailed it the first time.
Hell yeah. They were like, yeah, we need to stop and help push this car to safety. The woman inside the car recorded what happened next in a TikTok video that has since gone viral. The Marines are going to help us, the woman said, as 5 of the Marines in their dress blue uniforms with the white trousers wade into knee-deep floodwaters. This is so cool. We just got stuck. Thank you so much. One of the Marines then motions for them to roll down the window and asks if the car's in neutral. Once confirmed, they get to work. Thank you so much, says the woman as the Marines start pushing the vehicle. Marine power, the woman says, her voice full of, I know it's so cute, her voice full of emotion. This is so cool. Oh my God. This is the most American thing ever, she says.
Well, actually, Miss Ma'am.
Yeah, actually, I just wanted to note the most American thing ever would have been an eagle smashing into a NASCAR windshield with a McDonald's quarter pounder at its beak and a football in its talons. Then it starts flying around your car all crazy, breaks into your cooler, shotguns at butt heavy, then grazes its wing across your boot. Then says, no, I didn't.
Your ass.
Right. Anyway, thankfully, the Marines did not have to perform any more duties that day in their drenched uniforms. They were finished with their final funeral service of the day, Kosher said. Can you imagine them showing up to the last funeral of the day, just they're wearing white trousers, but from the knee down?
I don't think they would have. I don't think you definitely don't do that. If not, you're like, oh, we got to keep going. We got to get where we need to be.
If they had another funeral to go to, they would have just called somebody and said, hey, there's this car. This is where it is. It needs help. We can't stop.
Yeah, because you show up with your white trousers brown for the knee down.
And not only that, they're white and they're very thin. So you're going to be seeing some dick prints.
Absolutely. Or are women allowed on funeral duty?
They are, but in this case, there was not any.
Was not. Okay. Because I would also say flat prints just to be inclusive.
True.
Thank you. Anyways, Marine Corps body bearers.
No, it's fine.
Okay.
The old flat prints.
Marine Corps body bearers, old FPs. Marine Corps body bearers are part of a handpicked unit that perform funeral services at Arlington National Cemetery and elsewhere. I went to Arlington once and saw them. From like across the hill, they were doing one, and they had the huge, was it Clydesdales? They were pulling the casket.
Big horses, like the Budweiser horses.
Yeah, I had no idea that was part of it too. They were pulling the casket through Arlington and with these huge, beautiful horses. It was really, I stopped and watched the whole thing. It was really, really beautifully done. But anyway, it's a really special thing. I think that's one of those things you go into the Marine Corps sort of knowing you want to do. I didn't even know that was like an option when I was in.
No, it's not like a full-time MOS. It's a duty that you get assigned, kind of like being on the silent drill team, where it's not your actual MOS, but you get assigned to do that.
Okay. Because they don't just, I didn't know this either. They not only render honors for Marines, they participate in funerals for presidents and other dignitaries.
And joint services.
Yeah. And worth noting, this is far from an isolated story. There have been many instances in which Marines have come to the aid of people in need. In 2018, Marines from the Washington, D.C. barracks sprinted towards a burning housing complex for seniors. They were running with stretchers and wheelchairs and all sorts of things to help people.
Now
in
Casey's
November,
piling on with the good
Yeah,
things that
really.
the Marines do. Like, this is just...
they were. In November 2020, they helped free a woman pinned under her car.
It's got a CVS receipt worth of instances where Marines were amazing.
A Marine gunny that December saved an infant trapped in a burning car, and then other Marines helping out in the floods and all that kind of stuff. So Marines are the best is the moral of that story, but pretty cool. It did go super viral. And I have to say, if I was sitting in the car and I saw the Marines, it would have been one thing if they were in their camis, but to see them get out in their blues and their whites without hesitating, and to know they were scuffing those
but
core
at that
frames
point, think about where they're at too, because we can't give them all credit like, oh, they're just doing stuff out of the goodness of their own heart. These folks are in DC. They know good and well that if they're doing this, most likely somebody's going to be taking a picture. This is a meritorious mass or a NAM or something like that waiting to happen. You absolutely have got to pounce on these opportunities if you're a service member, not only because it's the right thing to do and you're helping somebody get their car out, but two, you might luck into it and have the commandant or somebody driving by and you get promoted on the spot. You never know.
Can I say now that you're saying that, if I needed some good PR, I'm not trying to be deep state Katie here. The military's been seeming a little rough news lately. The National Guard's driving buses.
It needed to be generals. That's who needed this.
Oh yeah,
to get out of a car.
They should set this up where the Joint Chiefs all get out of their car and push somebody. That's what they need.
Imagine.
We see that Millie's wife, General Millie's wife, buys a Mini Cooper tomorrow.
Yeah, it can't be Millie. He's too fat to push it.
Oh, chaps.
Sorry.
Oh, like he sees it.
Yeah, I am. But that story brings me up, speaking of, because they brought out last week, it was in a surprise move. Actually, I don't know if you're going to talk about that in the Afghanistan round, Kate. Are we going to talk about that? The drone strike at minutes?
No, but we need to. We'll add that at the bottom. Yeah. Okay,
cool. All right, let's move on to round number 2. Round number 2 today is going to be a little bit about the VA tent city. I will say the VA has made a lot of progress in the last couple of years since we've been doing this show. A lot of progress, like the ability, the access to getting an appointment and things like that has improved dramatically. The time and wait period that you have to do is also improved dramatically, but there's still a lot of things that we need to work on as a country. And one of those things is the way that veterans are treated and how they get help and how long it takes to get that help. Because according to Stars and Stripes, I believe is who wrote this.
No, this is actually LA Magazine. Yeah.
They said that there was a row of 30 some tents stretched outside of the San Vicente Boulevard in front of the West LA VA. And it doesn't resemble many other LA encampments. There are tents that are huge and the space all around them is kept pristine by their occupants. They must have like a duty NCO that goes around, like a barracks NCO, and make sure that everything's clean, which is nice whenever you're living that way. But this is Veterans Row and the residents there are angry. All of that land is just sitting there, said Reginald Smith, a Marine Corps veteran who gestures to the VA sprawling property sitting just behind an imposing black iron fence. Meanwhile, Smith says every day, 22 veterans die because of homelessness, mental health issues, and the costs are big. Veteran Row started as donations of tents to the West LA VA. That's a lot of
West LA VA. Yeah.
West LA VA. So they have all these tents going on and they call it Veterans Row to get rid of the Skid Row stigma, because that's also happening in LA and it's terrible. It just goes to show that if they were given the tools in the first place, a place to stay and somewhere to get stable, dumpsters and all that, they can clean up and take care of themselves. So they have all kinds of different shit. And they're right. There is a 388 parcel of land located between the affluent communities of Brentwood and Westwood.
This is what the problem is. So basically there's this huge thing of I went on Google Maps, I found the street and I put it on Street View and I went down this street. It is tent after tent after tent. There's dozens of them at this point. They all are adorned with American flags, very neatly kept on the sidewalk, but they're right up against the fence of the Veteran Affairs Hospital. And what they're angry about is right behind us, we're squished up against the property, is 388 acres of land that the VA has on this massive sprawling campus. And it's like, there's actually a couple, we'll get to it in a second. There's a couple tents in there, but they're like, why can't we be on the other side of this fence? Like we're stuck up against it when the VA has 388 acres of land.
That's huge. I mean, 300 acres, almost 400 acres is a shit ton of land. And it's not just like these veterans. It's the way that somehow, some way, we've gotten to a place in society where we look at people who are unhoused and think that they're all bad, all terrible, and not realizing that people are just can fall on hard times. Like, to me, if I ever was voting for a politician and they said that they were for those spikes and shit that they put underneath bridges so people can't sleep underneath them, to me, that is a disqualifier. Like, you're just not a human being.
But
like,
I understand that. At the same time, though, it is a safety issue. It is a safety concern. If I live in that neighborhood and I have to walk under that bridge every day late at night to get home from work, like, I see both sides. Like, I can see both sides of it. There has to be safe housing and it's dangerous for the people living in these areas too, like living in these tent cities too.
Yeah,
like,
these folks are just trying to sleep simple. I understand what you're saying, and
Yeah.
it is just like if I'm watching my family go by there and it's a underpass by where I live, it is a little bit different. Like, you still feel bad, but we've got to do something humane.
Yeah.
Like, there's got to be humane. And you know, honestly, shout out to Seattle. Like, the way that Seattle is doing a lot of this stuff and trying to come up with solutions, like if they have abandoned buildings where they buy it up and then the city will make housing, that's the way to go. Like, it just doesn't make any sense to treat people who are going through a hard time like garbage. And
that's what he's saying here. So the VA did open up some of that land during the pandemic. And they said this is the first time in the VA's history where we've had the opportunity for homeless veterans to fall under, on our property. The American Legion has referred to that sanctioned tent city as the VA's internment camp. So they see it a little bit differently. The 388 parcel of land, this is what people are so angry about. Way back in 1887, Arcadia Bandini de Stearns Baker deeded it to the federal government as a home for disabled soldiers. So this land was deeded to be something that helps veterans. It's part of the VA property, but that is not what happened. And back then too, another reason why people were angry, the great niece of DeBaker said it used to be like this thriving veterans city for veterans on hard times. There was a post office, a trolley station, 150 acres that were being farmed, orange trees all over the place. Now that's not there. The site has fallen into neglect, and the VA started using it for profit use. Even in 2013, a federal judge ruled the VA had misused it. They allowed a laundry facility for Marriott hotels to move in, production set storage for 20th Century Fox, a soccer club, the Brentwood School, a $40,000 a year kindergarten through 12th grade school, was running an athletic campus on the property. And not only that, a dog park, Red Cross offices, a Shakespeare festival, and a parrot sanctuary. There was parrots being housed better than veterans on this VA property, which is what's making some people nuts. And VA officials getting bribed nearly $300,000 for a parking lot that was netting $11 million in unreported revenues. Like, shit like that. That's what's making these vets angry.
It is unfair though to say that what happened in 1888 should be going on today, because that's 15 years post Civil War. So things were just a touch different in LA.
But that's what the property was deeded for. Like, that's the deed of the property. Like, that's what it's always supposed to be. So I get what people are annoyed about.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And especially because they're not doing anything good with it.
Right. And it would be much easier to do some good with it. I'll just speak from experience here in Hoboken with the American Legion. We have our building has 6 homes for homeless veterans, and we just signed the papers to get the expansion for another, I think 20 or 25 units.
Woo-hoo.
And I've loosely seen some of the numbers. It's not terribly expensive to do all of this and to house these individuals. So if they could take some of the money, I have to imagine the VA has some monies lying around, use some of that monies and maybe build a low income housing type situation on this property, and take some of these tent veterans and put them on the inside. And then, you can make it such that, I don't want to say you put them to work, but that they work to maintain their own community, right? So they have a purpose, they are working, and maybe you provide them a stipend for any work that they do, whether it's, maintaining of the grounds, maintaining the building, maybe there's a janitorial crew. I think there's a lot of options here that,
and I don't even think that's something that you would have to like dictate as far as terms, like, because most of these folks being veterans, they're not going to be opposed to working. Like, this isn't like folks that are going to be lazy or like the traditional concerns that you have there. Like, these are all folks that have worked and are willing And I mean, look at Tent City, like the way that it is now. And that's just tents, and it's nice and clean and things like that. It's people who just fell on hard times and need a little bit of help.
Yeah, so I do think there are options here to utilize this land and get rid of this tent city, because I also don't think it's, I'm speculating here. I have to imagine it's not great for a person's mental health to live in any sort of long period of time in a tent. Mm-hmm. So to get them out of this situation, I understand. Yeah, I mean, I get, sometimes this is a last resort, and I'm happy that these individuals at least have somewhat of a roof over their head for the evenings, but it's not something that's sustainable. So you got to work with them to get something more permanent.
I could 10,000% see Kate living in a yurt at some point in her life.
Honest to God, as I read this story, and I thought, if I didn't have a child, I would go spend a night at this tent city and like write about it or do something. Like, I'd just be curious to see what it's like and to know what it's like. Like, that's the kind of thing I used to want to, let me just go do this thing. But it was really interesting reading about the community that they had built there. There's a hierarchy, like a power structure. And then it's kind of the neat thing about it
you actually can't talk unless you get the conch,
unless you get the conch, right? But now advocates know here's where where like the hub of the homeless veterans are in the city. So we can advocate for them there. And this Reynolds gentleman was saying we know where to go to do our outreach, and it's forcing the VA to do its job, because now we're bringing them right to the VA with their paperwork. And it's like, you don't have a choice. You have to start helping these homeless veterans and showing the homeless veterans, like, here's like, you're going in there today. We're going to start getting you processed and start getting you more help, kind of thing. But they got to do maybe something a little better with that land, even if we were looking, you talked about this earlier, but the Veterans Community Project in Kansas City, which is now also in St. Louis, Missouri, and Longmont, Colorado, huge success for the tiny home movement, build tiny home villages and give people a sense of purpose and everything. If ZBT did a veterans village, couple things it would have for sure. One lone telephone pole with an ammo can next to it, surrounded by perfectly smooth rocks.
Ooh.
So everybody could play the throw rock and pole game. Barrack style smoke pit with rooftop barbecue grill speaker system.
And that would be amazing.
Great lights, ambiance. Teeny tiny 24-hour PX with essentials, energy drinks, and cigs.
And we need to have it with that Amazon technology where you don't even have to pay, where you walk out and it knows you have it.
Exactly. Yeah, just simple like that. And then finally, chaps, I think the most needed thing, and I think we'll say it at the same time. I think 1, 2, 3. Lazy river. Yes, a lazy river. Every community needs a lazy river, and maybe a peanut butter and jelly bar.
Oh, peanut butter and jelly bar would absolutely slap. Cons, that might be a good idea for your wedding too. Instead of the tacos at the end of the night where they're handing out tacos, if you had like a brown bag with a peanut butter and jelly in it when people were leaving the bar,
that could go a long way.
With a little thing with ice cold milk. I don't hate it. I
don't hate
that.
Well,
milk after boozing would probably be pretty bad. Maybe throw in a grapefruit juice.
White Russian?
Maybe.
Yeah, not in this political climate, Kate.
No, certainly not. By the way, I'm looking at these pictures for the Veterans Community Project. This is fantastic. And this is the type of thing that I'm talking about. I guarantee the VA has the money and the means to build something similar.
We stopped spending $500 billion a year in Iraq and Afghanistan now. We got money out the ass.
Yeah. We got a lot of free money now that's available for our use. So let's start putting it to good use.
Because we're not in debt at all.
Don't worry about it. Listen,
not reaching the debt ceiling next month. Nope.
Remember, we've been in debt. We've been in debt since forever, so we don't have to really worry about that.
The government legitimately just print more money. Like that's all they got to do. Just go to the mint, print more money. Simple as that.
Let's smash that glass debt ceiling, honey.
Yeah, that glass ceiling got smashed. It needs to be smashed just like the one for the Don't Ask, Don't Tell does, because that's been 10 years ago today is whenever Don't Ask, Don't Tell was ended. And it is one of the, I would say, of all the policies that were written, it's the worst policy that we've had militarily since segregation.
It's pretty fucking awful.
It's crazy to think that the people who wrote that legislation and ultimately President Clinton who signed off on it, that they all got together and they thought, all right, this is a good solution.
Because it was meant to be a compromise. It was a bipartisan thing, like the way that they had it. And now you have all these motherfuckers, these Democrats that are like, oh, we're all about gay and lesbian rights. Joe Biden, you were on the record saying marriage is one man, one woman for years, for 40 years in politics. You said it. Hillary, you did too. Barack, you did too. Bunch of liars. And now that it's out and the culture has said that it's okay, you didn't want to do it whenever you were even running for president, Barack Obama in 2008. You said no. You didn't do it until the political pressure of being a lame duck president got it there.
Yep. And it's just way overdue. I mean, before
I've got to be
Don't Ask,
breaking
Don't-
people's heads who are just used to me being liberal as shit, being like, what the fuck is going on here?
No, it's a terror. You're right though. Like all these hypocrites, all of them, just using things as pawns.
Everybody's hypocrites. The whole slew of them, all of them
whole lot
that
of
hang
them.
out in the Capitol building. They're all fucking hypocrites. If you
But-
go to the State of the Union address, hypocrite.
But yes, finally, and again, this is one of those things that is coming so late. Why did this take so long? But this comes to us from Leo Shane at the Military Times. Tens of thousands of LGBT veterans forced.
He does a great job. He does a lot of the things that Leo Shane is good.
Yeah, tens of thousands forced out of the military for their sexual orientation and given other than honorable discharges will be able to receive full VA benefits despite their dismissal status. And if you know anything about getting out of the military, and other than honorable hurts hurts so much in your life. It is such a huge detriment and makes life so much more difficult. Anyways, the change comes as the country approaches the 10th anniversary of the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell, which forced nearly 14,000 service members out of the ranks for admitting their sexual orientation. And a lot of times, like my friend at Fordham, it's not that they willingly even admit it, it's that they get outed involuntarily by other people in their unit.
And that was the fucked up part, is because the actual legislation is don't ask, don't tell, don't pursue. So you weren't even supposed to pursue, but that part gets left off. And that is exactly what the military did. If they don't ask, don't tell, and don't pursue, you could see the bipartisan aspect of it working. Like if you're not going to go after somebody, but that's not what they did. They constantly went after people and like, oh, you reported it, so we got to look into it. We got to ask you these questions. Oh, the fuck you don't.
But even still, that's 14,000. Like that's even with Don't Ask, Don't Tell, people who couldn't be themselves, which is a horrible thing too. But the impact of the new VA announcement goes further than just to those individuals to potentially include troops who served before and after the law, who may have been given bad performance reviews or intimidated into leaving because of their LGBT status. Outside advocates estimate that as nearly 100,000 over the last 70 years have been involuntarily separated from the military because of their sexual orientation. Data on how many received other than honorable is not available, but I'm assuming it's huge. It's huge. There was nothing to protect them.
And I want people to understand that even though you're doing this now, 10 years later, you're doing it now. Is it the right thing to do? Yes. But think about the age that these folks are getting out at, that they were forced out at. A lot of them 24, 25, 26, because they got that status of discharge. One, they weren't able to get any type of mental health care. They weren't able to get health care from the VA, period. Even no matter what happened to them in the service, if they got sexually assaulted or things like that, like depending on how these charges came out, you weren't able to get help. Two, you're so far removed from like being able to use your GI Bill and go to college and use all the benefits that you would have earned, the entitlements that you would have earned. And not because that's a nasty word, but because you are entitled to it. Taking 10 years out of somebody's life that they should have had these benefits is so fucking cruel. It added on the cruelty of this entire legislation.
Yeah. I've spoken to a few members who they got kicked out under, and it was life shattering. And they
makes you feel like less of a person
did
for
the
doing
job
absolutely
and
nothing wrong.
Dehumanizing.
They served this country. That's such a huge failure.
It doesn't compute to me. I actually had a buddy, another lieutenant, who had somebody in his platoon before they were getting ready to deploy, felt the need to tell him. He's like, hey, listen, I don't know what's going to happen when we deploy. I just think you should know this about me. And he came and he told me, and this is prior to 2011. I guess, I should have known that the Don't Ask, Don't Tell was still in place, or I guess I never really gave thought to it, but he's like, what should I do? And I was like, dude, who gives a shit? Is he a good soldier? And he's like, yes. And I was like, who cares? Doesn't matter at all.
It's crazy.
Don't worry about it. You don't have to tell anybody about it. He's like, oh, I feel like I have to, raise this up the chain of command. I'm like, you sure as shit do not. Don't worry about it. And I guess maybe if I was wrong, because by the book you were supposed to, well, then I'll own that. But
yeah. It's crazy. Gay rights advocates for years have noted that both before and while Don't Ask, Don't Tell was in place, many commanders biased against LGBT troops often issued bad conduct dismissals to those individuals, citing issues like substandard fitness reports or poor performance to cover up bigotry. And if you've seen those gays at the gym, honey, you know that's not the truth. Okay,
Yeah.
they're getting fucking ripped over there.
Mhm.
That
R.I.P.
had
that.
a lot of gym selfies. Anyway, the later prompted Goodwood Kate. The later prompted VA staff to deny benefits to those vets since their paperwork did not show honorable status. The new move will extend VA medical care, disability payouts, employment assistance, and other benefits individuals previously blocked for those discharges will now have those. So department legal officials believe the change will not require any new legislative action or policy statements because the department has authority, blah, 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 blah. White House officials are expected to mark the Don't Ask, Don't Tell repeal anniversary with an event on Monday. Exact timing for the VA announcement is unclear. They have not commented, but they probably should have just said, oh, sorry it took us so long.
Yeah. And we have how this came about in the legislation and how it ultimately ended is an incredible story too. So we are going to have on Patrick Murphy, who's the former Undersecretary of the Army, the 32nd Undersecretary of the Army, and former U.S. House of Representatives. He was a member of that as well. So we're going to have him on right now to give us a little background on how this change in legislation actually took place. Here he is. All right, so this is somebody I wanted to talk to for a while. I just introduced it to you, so you know already, but it's Patrick Murphy. He used to be the Undersecretary of Defense and a congressman from the great state of Pennsylvania, or the Commonwealth. Sorry, don't want to get down that road. The Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Patrick, thank you for joining us.
Hey, thanks so much. I appreciate it. It's good to be on.
Yeah, so I wanted to get into a little bit of what you've done because you've been all over the place in the veteran scene. And one of the things that you're doing now is you work with a lot of businesses, and you mentioned that you work a lot at West Point, being on their board, which I don't want to get into. I'm sure Cons would want to and talk about West Point all day with you on that. But I want to take a little trip back in time because it is the 10th anniversary of Don't Ask, Don't Tell being repealed. And you were in Congress and one of the main players that was involved in this and getting it going, because people now, they look at Barack Obama's presidency and think, oh, his policies were always the same. He was against the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell. He was repeal against the marriage for gay individuals. He was against all that stuff. So fighting against that in your own party, how did you go about that?
Yeah, well, listen, first off, I feel very blessed. I'm a guy that I grew up in Row House, Northeast Philadelphia. Was a 16-year-old kid playing hockey for our Street Bryant High School in the Northeast, and was an Eagles security guard on weekends, the old 700 level Veteran Stadium.
Oh, so, man, the 700 level, you've seen some shit.
Well, hey, man, listen, that was tougher duty than Baghdad, Iraq, when we served over there together. But listen, to me, to come back home, and I ran for Congress. I had like $320 in my bank account, but I saw what was going on. I thought it was wrong. We have like the least amount of veterans serving in Congress and the 21st century. And so, obviously I ran and I won, and then I won again. But I was America's first Iraq War veteran elected. So to me, it was always about my brother and sister veterans, especially the 9/11 generation. And so for me, serving in armed services and writing the bill that repealed Don't Ask, Don't Tell, to me, it's important. I mean, I'm about Catholic, I'm straight, 2 kids and stuff, but to me, it's like either believe in equality or you don't. You're either willing to fight for it or you're not. And my dad is a Navy veteran, and I was a cop in Philly for 22 years. He used to tell my brother, sister, and I, he said, like, hey, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. And for me to go, to teach at West Point like I did as a captain, I was there when 9/11 happened. I'm teaching constitutional law about what that blueprint, the fabric of our country is all about checks and balances, separation of powers, about equality, justice, liberty. And then to see over 13,000 troops get thrown out after doing that policy, what was called Don't Ask, Don't Tell. And then again, any statement, act, or marriage automatically triggered you to get thrown out of the military. Again, not for misconduct. I don't care if you're gay or straight, misconduct, yeah, we'll throw you out. But just because of who they loved. So I saw it with my own eyes when I was in the military. So when I was in Congress, I was damn sure going to try and change it, and we changed it. And then that became implemented, as you mentioned, 10 years ago today. So it's a pretty special day for a lot of us in that fight for equality.
Now, is this something that you were passionate about before you served and deployed, or did that come as like a byproduct of your service?
It's interesting. When I was 19, when I joined the Army, the first Colin Powell, because he was Roy Blue Collar and became obviously the chairman of his staff. And I read his book. It was called My American Journey when I was in college. And he talked about Don't Ask, Don't Tell. He's like, hey, we changed it. It's the right policy because being gay is a choice. And when I read that, of course, I just spit it out. Like when someone would ask me about it, and I still talk to, it's controversial. And I said, hey, well, it's a choice. And then I got older and I realized that, no, it's not a choice. It's actually, you're born that way, you know, and I've now family members that are out and you know even more about it. But, you know, I then just saw a lot of folks that they're not in the military, and I thought it was wrong. So I changed from being a cadet in the Army to eventually the Army coming to go to law school, and then I was in service, and then I saw people get thrown out, and I was like, this is a bunch of bullshit, frankly. Like, you know, and then I go to Congress, and I realized Congress is where it wasn't. I mean, it wasn't then. Didn't have hearings on it, so I was like, "Hey, let me run with this thing." Right? We had hearings. We had generals, and again, we had hearings about both sides. So I have 4-star generals in the Marine Corps and Army testify against. They said, "Oh, just keep the policy. It's working fine." I was like, "Yeah, it's working fine maybe for you, but it's not working for the 13,000 that got kicked out since this policy." You know, and again, not from misconduct. And so, and then frankly, since World War II, there's been 140,000 great Americans that were the cloth of our country that took that oath to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign, domestic. And to make a long story short, you know, we had hearings. We got co-sponsors that were, you know, Republicans as well. We passed it in the House. It got passed in the Senate, and President Obama signed into law.
And it's, I have to imagine, because you said that, like, being a captain and teaching at West Point and then going to Congress after that, I would imagine you had some of those old heads, those 3-4-star generals, people that had served a long time ago, and they silver-haired foxes and things like that, like we're getting to be now. But I imagine they pushed back a lot and were like, well, what do you know? You were just a captain. You were like a young major. What do you know about what is good for the total services? Which in a lot of areas, we talk about that on this show. If you want to ask us about internation conflict and how you move multiple theaters and do that, we don't know. Like I got out of Staff Sergeant Collins as a captain. You being a major influencing total policy, did you have people pushing back like, hey, you're too green to know any of this stuff, stay in your lane and leave that to us?
Yeah, I mean, I got it from colleagues that I served. Actually, I got it from colleagues that was running for office, and a lot of captains saying, hey, Murphy, who the fuck are you running for Congress? And I'm like, well, I'm Captain Patrick Murphy. I go, I'm not on active service anymore, and I served the Army for more time than I was supposed to serve. I stayed on extra. I taught at West Point. I did 2 combat deployments. I'm like, hey, if you have a problem with your running, why don't you go run for Congress somewhere? You know, like, I'm going back home to Philadelphia, and then I won. And you know, I was up over $3 million, and I only won by 0.6%, but I won. It's a win or win, you know, win or loss. So when I was in there in Congress, so I'll say that the military generals and stuff like that, they were respectful. You know, I wasn't going there trying to say, hey, man, I'm a congressman and try to outrank you. Like I don't play that game. Like,
no, you're not trying to have Admiral Mullen stand at parade rest or anything.
right. And like, no, I didn't do it as a captain, by the way, or a lieutenant. Like, you know, that was never my gig. Like, if you have to pull rank on someone that you know, whether you're staff sergeant or captain, like, that's not a good day. Like, you know what I mean? It's like, you've already lost. Like, you know, yeah. Right. So I will tell you a very funny story, if you don't mind me to share this one thing. I'm a freshman in Congress, and I'm going through orientation, and we're in DC before we get sworn in. And I meet this guy, Tim Walls. Tim Walls is a command sergeant major in the Army National Guard out of Minnesota. You know, we become buddies, and then we've got a really cheap apartment in Washington, D.C. So when we're there during a week, we could crash and, you know, share cable TV bills and share rent. He had a young family in Minnesota, had a young family in Bucks County. Long story short, he's now the governor of Minnesota. I'm like so proud of him. But we're serving Congress, and a reporter who was in the military, she said to me, hey, Murphy, she goes, you were a captain in the Army, and he was a command sergeant major, so you outrank him. Do you make him do the dishes and like clean up the apartment? I go, hey, man, with all due respect, if you never served in the military, because if you think a captain outranks a command sergeant major, you have no idea. So, you know, I was joking, but he's just a great American. I'm proud of him. And again, he kind of, I was working on the repeal of the Nice Hotel, and he was working on the post-9/11 GI Bill, which also passed. And you have about 1.1 million veterans and family members going to American colleges across the country right now on that bill that I co-sponsored with him, and he co-sponsored the repeal of the Nice Hotel, you know, with me.
And did you remember some of the outlandish concerns that a lot of the generals and admirals had, that it was going to really go against good order and discipline? It would affect training, it would affect housing. Have you seen in the last 10 years since it's been approved, any of that come to fruition?
No, man. Listen, and again, I had people call and get my face like, Murphy, you're gonna have blood on your hands. So I was like, listen, the military, we're the biggest meritocracy in the world. Like, you just got to do your job. We don't care who your daddy, mommy was. Like, like just do your job, do it well, and you'll get promoted and all that stuff, right? And if you don't do it well, you're not getting promoted. Like, it's pretty simple.
Simple as that.
Yeah. So, like for me, like I used to say, like, hey, the military is just so focused on their job. They have enough on their plate already. That we've been the agent of social change, but kind of frankly unknowingly, meaning that in the basically, geez, when the country was still segregated in the North and the South, where there was colored bathrooms, colored water fountains, and that's what they called them. That's not what I'm calling them, but that's what they called them.
Right.
We desegregated our military in the middle of the Korean War under President Truman, just in the early 1950s, when half the country again was still segregated. So when we were fighting for the repeal of the NSL, and I had a lot of cats say, hey, Patrick, I agree with you, but I can't do it now because we're in the middle of Iraq, Afghanistan. I was like, whoa, time out. We did this in the middle of the Korean War. And people were like, well, the generals, other members of Congress, well, the generals aren't for the repeal. I'm like, time out. The generals are part of the executive branch. We're a co-equal branch of government. Our Constitution says, we have the legislative branch, executive branch, judicial branch. It's like rocks, paper, scissors, right? We don't take orders from the president of the United States or from the administration. We do what's best. We represent 700,000 people, in each congressional district, and we do the best job that we can. And so, to me, it was a worthy fight. And when people say to me, like, to your question of like, oh, well, they're gonna rape people in the barracks, and they're gonna have the showers. I was like, come on, man. I was like, I went to base training in Fort Knox, Kentucky. Like, yeah, we had different base showers, but you literally have like 3 minutes of shower. You're in and out, you're shaving. Yeah, like there's not like hanging out. Like it's like that is not happening.
Yeah, and the whole idea that everything was going to deteriorate because of that is, like, looking back, it's easy to say that it was ridiculous, but a lot of us thought it was ridiculous at the time. Because I have Colonel Jessup over my shoulder here. One of the lines that from his famous, like, if you ordered him not to touch him and your Marines follow orders, why wasn't he in any danger? Like, that's the entire premise. Like, you follow orders and you do what you're supposed to do, even if you were against it. There's plenty of things morally that happened that lots of people are against, and I would imagine anyone who's ever served, you are going to come across things that you are morally against at some point, but that doesn't matter. Like, and that's how my viewpoints changed whenever I came back from combat. And I thought, if I'm going to fight for freedom, if that's what we're going to call this thing, I want people to be as free as possible. Like, if you want to marry somebody, marry whoever you want to. If you want to act this way or act that way, do whatever you want to, as long as you're not infringing on my rights and causing me personal bodily injury. I don't really give a shit. And that's where my entire philosophy of thought came from. If you're going to fight for liberty, be as free as you possibly can.
That's right, man. I mean, you treat your brothers and sisters in the military with dignity and respect, and other people you come into contact with. And again, as you know, man, it's a meritocracy. We're more diverse than American society, the military. We have more people of color that serve. We have Muslims that serve and Jewish Americans that serve. Like, you don't care who your God is. You don't care if you're an atheist. You don't care what your orientation is. Can you do your job? And when you're in combat, do your job so you get the job done and you're all come home alive. I mean, that was the whole thing. You make a difference. And so,
the best thing that they would say constantly is, oh, the military is not a social experiment. Bullshit. Yes, it is. And it always has been.
Yep. It's not like college, man. You're going to throw you 18-year-olds. There's going to be about 40 of you in the open bay barracks. You're going to be up every morning at 0 dark 30, and you're going to be going, 17, 18 hours a day. You're gonna get about 5 hours of sleep if you're lucky, and back at it.
And almost every single major social issue that happens in America first happens in the military. Like, it happens before, like even the color lines and things like that. That was all broken down before we did it as a country as a whole. Like, that's just the way that it's always been. I'm glad that you were able to get it done. I'm sure whenever it was finally signed and President Obama signed it, you had an outpouring of appreciation from different folks. Can you kind of tell when the pen actually went to paper, what that felt like for you?
All right, it was an awesome day, and I knew, like, when my kids got older, like my oldest now is like a freshman in high school, right? So I knew they didn't get it back then because we were so young. She was 4 at the time, but I knew like when they read about their daddy, whether it was on Wikipedia or something, or, you know, see me on Twitter and at Patchwork VA, like they're going to be proud of what their daddy fought for, like when given the chance. And to me, it was like, no one left behind. Like, you know, yeah, I might have been straight, but like I saw my brothers and sisters turn out. So, you know, I did lose my race, to be honest with you. Like I won and won again for Congress, but then that election when I was repealed, like I did lose. But to me, like Judgment Day is more important than election. And so for me, it was the right thing to do. And it's like playing sports. Like, I mean, when I played college hockey, like I was 3-year captain. Like I used to tell the young freshmen coming in, like, hey, I know they're bigger and faster in college and they were in high school, but like, if you're afraid to get hurt, you're gonna get hurt. So you got to play with reckless abandon. You got to play, you know, all out. And so it's the same thing in Congress. Man, I was going to do what was right, which I knew was right for the country. And I wasn't going to be like, oh, what does a poll say here? It's like, you got to stand in front of people and you got to look at it like, this is Patrick Murphy. This is what I stand for. This is what I think is the right thing for our community and our country. And if you don't agree with it, like, that's cool. And you can vote against me or you could support my opponent. But if you agree with me, you know, let's go. Let's do this because there's a lot of work for us to do to put this country back on the right track.
No doubt about it. And there still is, hopefully there's people in Congress that still have your approach to things. And we need more folks like that. Patrick, thank you so much for taking the time to join us. We appreciate it. Don't ask, don't tell, always like just anniversary, because it is kind of viewed as like an anniversary now, really, like where it's marked on every year that happens on social media, like we see it. And it always reminds me of my biggest leadership failure. And I had Corporal Carter on the show to talk about that and how I made huge mistakes along the way. And that relationship really impacted me on how I viewed the world and how I wanted to approach leadership in the future. This has been foundational and I think very, very a big difference maker. If you want to serve in an all volunteer force, who gives a shit who you love? Who cares?
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. I mean, I guess I'll say it's better late than never that they're getting all the medical care and disability payouts. Should also mention, hopefully that's a ton of back pay for these individuals. So they get some fat checks.
Yep.
Fat checks. I mean, 10 years of fucking back pay and maybe some even longer for the VA stuff. That's a lot.
I mean, no amount of money can make up for how they were treated and all of that, but it's, I guess, a decent consolation.
No doubt about it. All right, let's move on to round number 4. Round number 4, we're going to be talking about our good friends in China. Not really our good friends, I guess, but they are still out there doing their thing. And that is going to be presented by our friend at Nomad. Nomad started as a Kickstarter project in 2012 with the goal of building all rugged and minimalist tools for the 21st century nomad based in Santa Barbara, California. Nomad makes mobile accessories that only look good, but they're there for you when you need them the most. I have it on my phone. Cons is holding up his phone too. Leather, and I've had it on for like 2 or 3 months now, and it still looks as good as the day that I put it on, which is really shocking.
Yeah, I had another leather case from a company whose name I won't mention because who knows, maybe they'll want to work with us down the road. What's up, Steve Jobs? But it did not protect my case. And now the Nomad case is on there. No issues whatsoever.
Well, that's probably because they have better cables and better equipment, like their reinforced double braided Kevlar outer sheath. Anytime you include a sheath, I think that's good to include penises. They have a strong metal ally connector for the housing. They have all kinds of stuff that you're going to want to see. And it's made from leather at the Horween Tannery in Chicago. It smells amazing. It's climate controlled, certified brand. Check it out and go to Nomad at nomadgoods.com/0 to see what living the nomad life is about. That's NOMADGOODS.com/0. Let's move on and see what those little lovable Chinese folks are doing in their military.
Okay.
Hold on. I have some breaking news.
Oh.
That Kate needs to address post haste. From our colleague, Barstool Pat. I will unfortunately be terminating my friendship with Kate Barstool due to her stealing my headphones. I take them back, but she's currently mid breast pump upstairs.
I am in the breast pump room, but only to record CBT. I love hanging out in here. I fucking love it.
Yeah, but what about the headphones?
These are his. Yes.
And you didn't ask.
Needed a pair in a pinch. Hey, your gear becomes.
I feel like that's because Kate does out and about. I feel like when you're podcast partners, if somebody takes your headphones and it's your podcast partner, you understand the podcast game, so you can't say anything.
Exactly. Okay. I was in a pinch.
Fair enough.
Like if you guys use it, I think it is different if you're wearing ones like Kanzas, where it's like the earbuds. Can't borrow an earbud, but if it's an over the ear, then you can.
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. They were over the ear. I saw them sitting there. I took them.
Okay.
All right. What's going on with China? Okay.
Oh boy, the Chinese Communist Party. You know, it looks like a good time in the military because they have all those dang parades all the time. They got the big missiles rolling around. They have all the tanks. But as cool as that seems, morale very low. People in the defense world are speculating that the military's morale is getting so low, they're starting to do things that have to like actually address it and actually give a shit about their soldiers for a change. So some believe that Chinese soldiers' low morale is attributable to the country's long-standing one-child policy, which has made the military one of the world's leading one-child armies. And quick caveat, do you guys remember all the details that kind of China's one-child policy?
Yeah, like where you're only allowed to have one kid, and a lot of folks in China, they still viewed like the patriarchy where having a boy was better than having a girl because you're going to carry on the surname. So they would go in and do all kinds of like ultrasounds and things like that. And if it was a girl baby, they would abort it.
Yeah, there's all sorts of stuff that comes from it. But for a long time, they had a two-child only policy. And then in the 1980s, it became strict enforcement for one.
And the real reason for a reversal, did you know this? It's because India is going to pass China as far as population probably in the next 4 to 5 years.
Yeah, well, didn't know that.
So they'll be the most populous country in the world. They're suspected to have 1.3 billion, and India will have 1.4 billion.
You get like a medal for that, or what? Like what?
I
What
think
do
you
you
just have more folks, and like if you have a mandatory time to serve, and you have 1.4 billion people in your country, and you can make fucking almost the entire population of the United States be in your military, that's a lot of folks.
Yeah. Well, so and one of the reasons they enforced it there's all sorts of reasons that I won't get into, but all sorts of political reasons. From 1949 to 1976, the population blew up from 540 million to 940 million. So all of a sudden their population absolutely exploded and they could not keep up. And it was causing all sorts of problems. So that's why they enforced this rule. So over 70% of Chinese soldiers today are only children, and the rest are second or later children whose parents had to pay fines to have them.
That's crazy.
The Confucianist view that children must respect and take good care of their parents and ancestors remains deep-rooted in China. As a result, parents are particularly reluctant to see their children die earlier than they do. So parents of one-child households must feel even more strongly about their son or daughter becoming nothing more than a proverbial nail.
That's actually good as like being averse to war. Like if you like you have that and you have a reason for them to go, like because usually it's going to be the olds that are voting to make the youngs go to war. Yeah. This is a good deterrent for that.
Well, listen to this. So not only is that one of the reasons that morale might be low, number two, in China, it is totally opposite of here. People tend to have very little respect for soldiers. There is a saying, good steel does not become nails, meaning respectable individuals do not become soldiers, because they consider soldiers nails. The country just hammers you in and boom, you're dead, boom, you're dead, boom, you're dead, but we need you. We need your life to build this country kind of thing. So yeah, good steel does not become nails, meaning respectable individuals, not soldiers. In order to ensure it can secure sufficient numbers of troops, the party has been working to improve salaries and pensions. On August 1, the government enacted a law to protect the status, rights, and interests of military personnel. Until then, there was literally nothing at all. The desperate effort to improve the patina of military career might be a sign that the People's Liberation Army has not been able to turn around its recruitment efforts, especially in the face of the country's ebbing fertility rate. The Chinese military has increased the deployment of battleships and fighter planes since a few years ago, but their operating rates are not exactly high. It seems they are unable to sufficiently train enough soldiers to properly maintain and repair all that high-tech hardware. So the whole population thing is coming into, anyway, it goes on and on, but I just thought that was interesting. It was two things that I never thought of. You look at them and it seems like, oh my God, there's this superpower and they have it all, blah, blah, blah. It's like, actually, no, they have a a military population problem, and they're fucking miserable, and nobody respects
And they don't
them.
have a lot of depth either in their militaries. Like their military is, I would imagine that it's a lot like that Lakers team with Shaq and Karl Malone and Gary Payton and Kobe, where you looked at the names and you're like, oh shit, man, they're going to be fucking good. But they don't tell you that it was after Karl Malone had already been in the NBA for 20 years and Gary Payton was old and slow. Like they don't, and no, all they have is a bunch of role players. So their first line is Shaq, pretty good. Then they got Kobe, pretty good. But the rest of them are just fucking trash.
That's a phenomenal comparison. I must say that,
really
that was fantastic. You know, they could also work to improve the morale in their country if they were just not a miserable country overall, aside from the military.
Well, I don't think that they're like, I think a lot of that Donnie loves China. Like when he talks about it, he talks about it glowingly. I think there is certain aspects out about it that are good.
But even he says there's a scary, scary edge to it where all of a sudden you realize.
And he also gets to leave. I feel like the people of China don't feel like they can have the opportunity to leave quite as easily as Donnie comes and goes.
Yeah. And he says expats get a little more leeway too than most people there. So I don't know. It's an interesting thing. But they said this even is affecting their doctrine, like the fighter jets, surface ships, submarines, missiles, blah, blah, blah. Because things that are unmanned, they're looking for things that are unmanned because they're having a problem with manpower, morale, all the stuff. So just something interesting, miserable. I wonder if they have a Chinese ZBT and they're ripping on us.
Wow. Imagine what are our Chinese counterparts?
They're over there saying our morale is low when we're doing great. Thanks.
Yeah.
We're having a great time. Thanks.
Yeah.
I don't know what kind of rippets they drink.
Yeah. I don't know.
All right. Let's move on to round number 5, where we're going to get into a little bit of the Afghanistan updates. Spoiler alert, they're going to be a little depressing. Okay.
Yeah. And I just wanted to keep it on the radar because I feel like it ended in the news sort of. But a lot of us are still thinking about it and like we care and what's going on. So I want to keep up to date on that. Couple of quick updates. The banks, huge problem with the banks. I'm seeing.
And if you know Kate at all, you know she's a big bank head.
Numbers. I love numbers. But from the beginning, from the day after we left, huge lines. I mean, like for miles of people desperate to get to the banks to get their money. It's like the Great Depression, 1929. They said people went running to the banks. There's no money there. All their money was gone. Like, and that scarred our grandparents. Like that fucked people up for a hot minute there, to put it eloquently. Anyways, a lot of people already in poverty in that country. The money left over that might help them, around $9 billion in central bank reserves, is frozen by the Americans to keep it away from the Taliban. Big building projects in the city have stopped. The banks are closed. The foreign money tap has been turned off.
It's legitimately wild that America has that ability, right? Like that you can cut off banking to an entire country, like that you have that ability to be like, okay, cool. All right. And now we're going to fucking sanction the shit out of you and you're not going to be able to do anything with your money. It's wild that we have that power.
Yes, but very, very effective power.
Oh, surely. Yeah.
Right, because the World Food Program estimates that 93% of Afghans are not getting enough food to eat. It was already pretty abysmal at 80% before we left, but now 93%. That's something that when people are hungry, the Taliban is going to have to deal with that and find an answer for that. And because people will revolt, people will even against them.
That's a basic need. Yes. So people will revert to
happened in Venezuela recently.
Instincts.
You had that kind of in Cuba. It's been happening recently as well. North Korea, it happens pretty consistently.
But your heart breaks for, we take a lot for granted. And
we take it for granted, right? Because all of us were very fortunate. We don't have to worry where our next meal is coming. There's obviously people, even in this country, who are food insecure, who worry where their next meal is coming from. And I bet that number would shock a lot of people because everyone just thinks everything's hunky-dory for everybody in America, and that's certainly not the case. But it's certainly not 80 and 93%.
And I follow an Instagram account that is they're doing food drops hidden around the city for women who are hiding from the Taliban right now in safe houses, and they're raising funds and doing food drops for them to get, because there's no way for them to get food right now. They can't even really be seen in public. Leadership drama is Afghanistan's deputy.
Before we move to that, to Khan's point, I looked it up. 10% of Americans are food insecure. 1 out of every 10. That's still a fucking lot.
That's exactly right. That's a staggering number that you wouldn't think, but it's the case. It's unfortunate. It's very sad.
40 million people.
Yeah, that's a lot of people. Leadership drama. Afghanistan's deputy prime minister Mullah Baradar, is he being held hostage in Kandahar? Has Taliban chief Haibatullah Akhundzada died?
I gotta say, Kate, the way that you're pronouncing names lately is just, I mean, most improved player. I mean, just absolutely incredible, nailing it.
Thank you. Well, an air of secrecy surrounds the two Taliban leaders who were initially tipped to be number 1 and 2 in Afghanistan's latest power structure. Even in the weeks before they took over from us, from the Afghan government, there was a lot of scuttlebutt about infighting within the Taliban top ranks, who's getting what position and why, and a lot of drama. So now one of them supposedly might be dead and one of them might be held hostage. Baradar has
some may be good, some may be shit.
So it might be a little mix of both. Baradar has barely been seen since he was reportedly involved in a violent clash with the Haqqanis during government formation talks, aka the Haqqani network. He recently resurfaced in Kandahar to deliver a video message to squelch rumors that he was seriously injured, but people are saying it looks kind of like a hostage video. So not great for him. Tell him you're okay, bitch. Tell him you're fine. Anyways, so interesting news there. Bad but expected news for women in Afghanistan. When schools reopened on Saturday for grades 7 through 12, only male students were told to report to their studies. The Taliban said nothing about girls in those grades, so they stayed home, their families anxious and uncertain about their future. Both boys and girls, grade 1 through 6, have been attending schools, but separated by gender and curtains and all that stuff. But now, if you're grade 7 through 12, no more for women, basically. The female literacy rate in Afghanistan is around 30% and probably going to go way down pretty quick. So this is where you have to hope that there's a good underground network, like the Lance Corporal Underground, that, I know during Taliban times before, there was underground networks of women teaching each other and learning and whatever, but it had to be so secretive. It was so dangerous. So, And most important of all, the Taliban have sacked the executive director of Afghanistan's cricket board. That's right.
Wow.
He announced on his Facebook page Monday, I got fired by the Taliban and they have taken it over by one of the Haqqanis took over. Before, no sports in Afghanistan. Maybe they're going to allow cricket, but it's Taliban cricket. So that's a bummer. Finally,
better than cicadas, like they've been in the news here.
Absolutely. Brood X. Am I right? Sheesh. Finally, the most important news of all, chaps. I didn't know if you want to talk about it. The drone strike. And what's been going on with that?
So the U.S. government actually came out and admitted that they made a mistake and said that the drone strike against the civilians was a bad thing and that they were sorry and that they were going to try to send money. One, I think just a couple notes quickly, because we've already talked about it, so we don't have to get into it. I think it's good that America finally acknowledged the fact that they did it, but we would not have done that without the Washington Post and the New York Times investigation that revealed what was going on. The hand was forced, because before that, Milley and all them were saying that it was a completely justified strike. So I think that we should make choices and readjust the way that we do this. And I think that part of this can happen on the backs of Congress, and it's going to be Congress' responsibility because they took back the war powers from the executive government. I think that is going to be hugely important, where we need to really adjust the way that we do drone strikes, because I looked it up, 6,000 deaths at least of innocent civilians since the war on terror started, which is just absolutely shocking. 6,000 errant drone strikes, maybe as many as 15,000 killed.
I think it's a common misconception. We just assume our drone strikes are very, very accurate, which I think they are to a great extent, but that doesn't make them
not nearly as enough.
Right.
In that type of thing, you have to have a perfect record, or you got to be held to account for it of what goes on. And not saying the worst part of this is not saying who ordered the strike. You got to take responsibility. That should be mandatory reporting. Who ordered the strike?
Yep. And the add insult to injury, it was the Corolla that they targeted was unloading jugs and supplies at Nutrition and Education International. So that was somebody trying to help 7 children, 10 people altogether. Terrible.
All right, let's move into save rounds and alibis. Cons, we'll start with you.
Sure thing, chaps. Number one, I don't know if we've ever pointed this out. Credit to chaps who, for the last, 5 years we've been doing this show? 5 years. Chaps has always just operated with Eastern Standard Time, despite living in a central time zone. Do you know what I'm saying? You always talk about Eastern Standard because you're always working with Kate and I and our producer. And you've only kind of really jumbled that up like once or twice. And I think that's pretty impressive. for 5 years. So
I think about that sometimes too, Cons. Good.
Yeah.
Kudos to Chaps on that.
You just work in Eastern time zone. Your brain's, your body's in Central, your brain's in Eastern. Impressive, friend. So nice. You talking about cicadas? That just reminded me. Chaps, is there a lanternfly problem down in Texas?
No, but a big wasp problem right now in my pool. Like there's been wasps, and I just ordered this stuff. It's called algae treatment, and it's supposed to make the surface tension of your water in your pool where wasps can't stand on it. So it's almost going to be like quicksand whenever they get into it and they die. Cannot wait for that because I hate wasps.
Me too, man.
I'd never do it to a honeybee, so don't even come at me with that. Honeybees are very different.
Right.
Yeah, but the wasps have been bad the last few weeks at outdoor activities. So got to keep an eye on that. And then lastly, I don't know if I just had noticed it or if it's super brand new and I'm just now seeing it, but I saw this weekend probably because I had to watch Army's game on television because I was away at a wedding in Pennsylvania. We have, all the teams, they do like the turnover chain and the turnover this, that necklace or this, that, and the other. Army has a turnover tomahawk or like a broad axe. It's awesome. It's awesome. And I tweeted it out this week. We can tweet it out again, but I just think in terms of turnover props, that's right up there with the best ones in the country.
You know what I would love? A wholesome football team that had a turnover, a nice blackberry turnover, baked good.
Let me tell you something.
A little bit of icing on the top. I'm on turnover kick lately, pal.
Okay. Can you explain to me? I never really gave thought to this. And then 2 weeks ago, I was at a restaurant and they brought us turnovers. And I don't, maybe I hadn't had one, but it was amazing. What is an actual turnover? Like, what is it?
It's the Rolls Royce of Pop-Tarts. It's like an extra crispity, but triangle shaped. And it's just a crispity crunchy. They're normally apple. It's like a small apple pie burrito.
Okay. Or maybe it was a popover. I don't know, man.
Chaps wants to murder us.
Yeah, I know. It's okay.
Okay.
All right. That's all I got. I got.
Again, I'm panicking. I should have prepared. No, I'm not. I was at a wedding this weekend. I
saw some dance moves from you.
But you know what? I only had a glass and a half of wine. I can't party anymore, man. I'm just awkward and weird. Everyone's ripping on me for wearing ugly, flat, like Jesus sandal shoes.
I thought you looked lovely.
No, regardless of that, on the dance floor especially, you just want some comfy shoes.
Yeah, and my back is fucked. I can't wear cool shoes anymore, so that's that. Anyway, no safe rounds for me. Shoot.
Nothing for me either. We have people putting in our floors upstairs. I'm excited about that and doing all kinds of reno projects and all kinds of shit going on here. So it's been stressful.
Wait, what kind of floors? What are we talking about here? What's going on?
So just some new wood floors.
Nice. Real wood or
nice.
What kind of tree?
Spruce, I believe.
Oh, I didn't know they were doing that well. Wow.
Maybe hickory. I'm not sure.
Cool.
Wifey picked them out. So
hickory.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
That's it. We'll see you guys back here on Friday. Sound the retreat.